May 3rd, 1999, 1:40 a.m. The snow-covered mountains of Kargil. Across those dark Himalayan peaks, the temperature had already fallen far below zero. The wind was so cold that even breathing felt like a punishment. That same night, a few local shepherds noticed strange movement high above the mountains. Dim lights flickering through the snow, unknown shadows, an activity that did not feel normal. At first, nobody realized this was the first sign of an approaching war. In Delhi, everything still appeared normal. But behind the rocky cliffs of Kargil, a deadly plan was already taking shape. Under the strategy of Pervez Musharraf, the Pakistani army had already crossed the line of control months earlier and begun occupying Indian mountain positions. Their objective was not just to capture a few posts. The plan was to cut India's supply lines, isolate Leh and Siachen, and force the Kashmir issue onto the world stage. From the higher peaks, enemy soldiers could clearly see every Indian movement below, while Indian troops were forced to climb upward through completely exposed icy slopes. This was not just a war of bullets. This was hell fought at the heights of death. When the first reports reached Delhi, the intrusion was initially treated as a small infiltration. But within days, the Indian army realized these were not ordinary militants. They were highly trained Pakistani soldiers armed with heavy weapons and mortars. Machine guns had been deployed across nearly every mountain peak. As Indian patrol teams moved higher, sudden waves of gunfire erupted from above. Several soldiers fell into frozen ravines. Broken voices and panic began echoing through radio transmissions. Slowly, the valleys of Kargil were transforming into a battlefield. The entire nation was shaken when Indian officers and soldiers started disappearing. Days later, their brutally damaged bodies were discovered. Those horrifying scenes ignited anger across India. For the first time, people watching television saw Indian soldiers climbing nearly vertical frozen cliffs while staring directly into death. Inside Delhi's war room, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee held continuous meetings with military commanders. New reports were arriving every single hour. The army made one thing clear: those mountain peaks had to be taken back at any cost. But the problem was brutal. The enemy was above and Indian soldiers were below.
Every rule of war had turned against India. Then began Operation Vijay, a massive military operation that pushed thousands of Indian soldiers into the frozen death zone of Kargil. Under the darkness of night, soldiers climbed mountains carrying heavy weapons and ammunition. Oxygen levels were dropping and breathing itself became difficult. Some soldiers collapsed even before enemy bullets could reach them, simply because of the cold and altitude. But despite everything, Indian troops kept moving upward night after night. Tololing became one of the first battle zones where the Indian army faced terrifying resistance. Pakistani soldiers positioned above could see every movement below. Indian troops were forced to crawl forward between rocks and ice. The moment a soldier lifted his head, machine gun bullets ripped through the air. Many bodies remained frozen on the snow for days because recovering them was nearly impossible. The roar of artillery echoed across the valley. Bofors guns fired relentlessly, and in the darkness, explosions across the mountains looked as if the entire Himalayas were burning. Amid those deadly battles, one name began spreading across the nation: Captain Vikram Batra. The battle for Point 5140 had become critical for the Indian army. The enemy held a powerful position above while bullets rained down from every direction. In the darkness of night, Vikram Batra and his team climbed upward using the rocky cliffs for cover. As they moved closer to the enemy, the battle turned into close combat. Explosions, bullets, screams, and snow. Within hours, the entire mountain disappeared into war smoke. But by sunrise, the Indian flag was flying proudly on the peak. News of that victory spread across the country, and for the first time, people realized this was no longer just a border conflict. It had become a battle for the nation's honor.
But the war
was far from over. Tiger Hill was still under enemy control. That peak stood so high it overlooked the entire region. Pakistan believed India would never be able to reclaim it. During those dark nights of July 1999, Indian soldiers climbed nearly vertical walls of ice. The Indian Army planned a multi-directional assault from several sides at once. Under complete silence, special units advanced upward through the most dangerous route possible. The path was so deadly that the enemy never imagined anyone could attack from there. Before sunrise, Indian troops had reached extremely close to enemy positions. Then suddenly, the entire mountain erupted with gunfire and explosions. In several places, the fighting became so close that soldiers were forced into hand-to-hand combat. After hours of brutal battle, the Indian flag finally rose above Tiger Hill. At that moment, the direction of the war completely changed. International pressure was now building against Pakistan. India continued showing the world that the attack had come from across the border. Slowly, Pakistani positions began collapsing. One by one, Indian forces reclaimed their mountain peaks. The Indian Air Force had also entered the war. Mirage fighter jets roared above the mountains, carrying out precise strikes on enemy bunkers. Amid these battles, another name was becoming immortal, Major Anuj Nayyar, as the Battle of Mashko Valley turned increasingly deadly. In some areas, the combat became so intense that soldiers had to throw grenades by hand while hiding behind rocks. After every explosion, snow blasted into the air, and for a few seconds, the battlefield disappeared beneath white smoke. Rescue teams from the Indian Army spent hours trying to recover fallen soldiers from the mountains. At railway stations across India, civilians stood waiting with food and water for the soldiers. In schools, children began writing letters for the Indian Army. After the fighting ended, many mountain peaks were left in complete silence, with only the sound of freezing wind. But the price of victory had been devastating. Hundreds of Indian soldiers remained forever within those frozen mountains. Across the country, the coffins of martyrs began returning home, while thousands gathered in the streets. July 26, 1999. The Kargil War was officially over. But the blood spilled across those mountains still lives forever in the history of the Indian Army. Kargil was never just a war. It was a battle that showed an entire generation the true meaning of patriotism, sacrifice, and the cost of war. Jai Hind.